Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I'm Marina Stenos, managing partner at Finn Partners, lead the global education practice, and I'm here today with Dr. Jacques Armaos, founder and CEO of Ephrata Communications, a strategic communications agency headquartered in Athens, Greece. He's also a lecturer in the Department of Philosophy at the University of Athens, where he teaches a seminar on the intersection of the humanities and entrepreneurship, a timely topic for our world and for our summit, and even more importantly, the conversation we're going to have today. Welcome, Jacques. For decades, the conversation around educational leadership has been heavily dominated by the how. How do we improve standardized test scores? How do we increase enrollment? How do we measure success? While operational excellence is important, we're seeing the exhaustion of this purely technocratic model. Students and educators alike are feeling overwhelmed. We're facing a crisis of meaning just as we enter the dawn of one of humanity's most immensely and intensely technologically advanced stages. Welcome to the era of AI. Let's talk a little bit about what that means from where you sit in the intersection of communications and learning. Drawing on your background in political philosophy and strategic communications, what do you make of the recent shift of educational institutions, which are prioritizing performance metrics, in other words, the how of schooling and its outcomes, over the fundamental why, in other words, the purpose of learning, particularly at this critical juncture in human history?
First of all, let me thank you for this warm welcome. I believe that we are experiencing today something that's not simply a shift in priorities. It is a deeper departure from the very purpose of education itself. We are living in a time when education risks becoming a dry assembly line of skills and certification. When we focus only on performance indicators, for example, KPIs, that is on how quickly students can enter the job market, we lose the why of learning, the formation of individual with critical thinking and moral judgment. For decades, the university functioned as a space of cultivating crisis in the ancient Greek sense of the term, the ability to discern, to evaluate, to make meaning. Today, that function is being replaced by an almost one-dimensional fixation on measurability. I believe we speak about indicators, we speak about rankings, we speak about employability. If we look at what's happening globally, this is not just a trend, it is a systemic shift. Universities in the United States are merging or eliminate humanities programs. Thousands of jobs are being lost, and the justification often given is that the fields of non-monetizable. This is highly revealing because it shows that the value of education has become almost exclusively equated with measurability and immediate economic return. As has been rightly observed, we are moving from the University of Education, pedia in the Greek word, as we say, to University of Training. And here lies the core problem. The how, metrics, rankings, efficiency, has become detached from the why. Very often, to arrive at the right answer, you must first ask the right question. A person trained to seek the why in every situation will not only be effective today, but will also be able to face future challenges. So the issue is not the measurement itself. The issue is that measurement has become the end goal. The how is seductive because it is measurable, scalable, and politically defensible. But education, at its core, it's not a production system. It's a meaning-making system. When we lose the why, we don't simply produce efficient students. We risk producing disoriented citizens, Marina. Perhaps the greatest paradox is that this devaluation is happening precisely when these skills are more necessary than ever in a world shaped by AI, uncertainty, and information overload. So for me, the answer is not to reject measurement, it's to restore the proper hierarchy. First the why, then the how. In my view, the why is not a philosophical luxury. It is a strategic necessity. Without a clear sense of purpose, the how simply becomes more efficient, but directed toward an unknown destination, Marina.
It's really powerful to think of it as a disorientation across the system and how that affects individuals. I appreciate that. I think we're seeing some of those consequences of almost a loss of meaning play out in real time around the world. In the US, we're undergoing a rapid and intense period of cultural and economic transition across the entirety of the education landscape. I think Europe is actively trying to redefine its own education goals, as you alluded to. And in Greece, I know there are currently some real seismic shifts, things, really changing the manner in which systems are operating, most notably the recent historic legislation allowing non-state universities. And of course, again, we're going to talk about AI, the introduction of AI in almost every context of our daily lives. Yakos, when you look at these massive structural changes in Greece and across Europe, how is that affecting the social contract of education that you spoke to a little earlier? Maybe even more broadly, how is it affecting the notion of leadership? Or is that the rules, or are they being tested and rewritten today? What comes next?
You have touched on a critical point. The exhaustion of a model that has learned to measure everything, but forgotten how to interpret anything.
Mm.
What is changing today is the very notion of the social contract of education, Marina. When we talk about a crisis in the social contract of education, we are essentially referring to a broken promise. For years, the agreement was simple: study, become efficient, the how, and society will secure your place. Education will provide the how, the skills, and the market will provide stability. Today, however, this technocratic approach that focuses solely on performance metrics leaves people exposed. In Greece, for example, we are witnessing a strongly evaluation of studies, as has been noted, where the value of a degree is measured almost exclusively by immediate employability. This creates a vicious cycle. Low demand, less funding, reduced visibility, even lower demand. At the same time, across Europe, there is an ongoing restructuring that often aligns education with market needs, yet struggles to preserve its broader educational mission. In the United States, this trend has already reached its extreme. Corporate side restructuring, programs being sunset due to the lack of demand, and university operate under portfolio management logic. And this brings their historical role as subordinate disciplines, supporting other fields rather than the same in them. And this is where I find the age of anxiety by Oden particularly relevant. We will rather be ruined than change. Because what we are seeing, both from institutions and from within the humanities themselves, is a difficulty in adapting. This is the key. A leader, Marina, with a philosophical foundation, someone who understands the social context of things, is not only effective under current conditions, they are resilient in the face of any future challenge, even the most unpredictable technological disruption, because they have trained to think in terms of principle, not just methods. So the next step is neither full commodification, I believe is the word, nor a denial of reality. It's the new synthesis. Effectiveness must be redefined. It's not enough, Marina, to achieve a goal. We must understand why that goal matters for society and for humanity. Leadership that ignores meaning, that doesn't count the word meaning, may thrive in the short term, but it will fall to build the trust required for a shared future.
We always return to the poets, right? You quoted Auden, we'd rather be ruined than change. I think that's a real a reality and a real friction in the system that we're encountering. These transitions, we talk about them in sort of very neat terms, but they're quite difficult to pull off in real life. humans, right? Humans get in the middle of it. So let's talk a little bit about what does that reality look like, whether it's the privatization debate in Greece, budget cuts or curriculum overhauls, layoffs in the corporate sector, major shifts in workflows and efficiency expectations. That's a big part of what is underlying. You noted there sort of we're looking at education as a portfolio to be managed rather than the learning of human beings, an endeavor that is quite human. But there's an intense friction here. So how do we talk about purpose, not in a vacuum, but within this incredibly challenging environment with stakeholders who are polarized or actively protesting and resisting this evolution, if we take it that way? How can strategic communications help leaders navigate this friction and bring purpose back into the conversation? And how do you, let's get really specific, how do you, in your work, create a long-term humanistic vision when the immediate environment is demanding that short-term answer and aggressively pursuing that technocratic innovation, that efficiency, exclusive of purpose?
This is perhaps the most difficult, but almost the most essential question. Because in such condition, communication is not simply a tool for transmitting messages, it's a mechanism for shaping reality. So the core problem today, of course, it's not the lack of information. We have so much information that we don't know what to do with it. It's a lack of meaning. Organizations are called to operate in an environment where the pressure for metrics is overwhelming. Where there's pressure for immediate results, the natural tendency is to communicate the how, numbers, performance, metrics. But if we limit ourselves to that, we end up reinforcing the very problem we are trying to solve. Strategic communication must bring the why back to the center, not in the abstract terms, but in a way that connects in a way that connects to people's everyday reality. In practice, according to my humble opinion, this means three things. First, coherence. Organizations must align what they say with what they do. Purpose cannot be only part of a campaign, it must be an operating principle. Second, interpretation. In a world of information overload, values, Marina, does not lie in information itself, but in the ability to give it meaning. And this is precisely where the humanity come in. And third, trust. Trust, it's a very difficult word. And in our days, it's very difficult to find one. Trust is not and cannot build through speed. It'll build through consistency. And trust needs time. At Efrata, for example, we have made a conscious decision to integrate people, Marina, not only with marketing background, but with marketing background alongside with people with humanity backgrounds, mostly philosophy and history. We do that not as an alternative to communication, because it's not alternative to communication, but as its evolution. Communication today is not just messaging, it is interpretation. And this is where the humanity ceases to be seen as a only that has to do not only with money, but become critical. They offer what cannot be easily quantified, yet shapes everything. The framework with which data acquires meaning. So the answer to friction is not to avoid it, is to structure it communicatively around that coherent why that can endure over time. And effectiveness without commitment to the human elements, it's not an achievement, Marina. True leadership, again, according to my humble opinion, is the ability to keep a community united even when the number push in the opposite direction.
It's a compelling approach. I think the notion that you're hiring people with not just a marketing or communications background, but also the context of history or philosophy or any of the liberal arts, I would argue, is that sort of the secret sauce, as we would call it. I very much build the team here in the same way. Some of the best hires I've had, believe it or not, are poetry majors. and writers, strictly writers, English majors, we would call them
I'm
here
very
in
happy
the
to hear
US.
that. I'm very happy to hear that, honestly.
Absolutely. And I think you're getting at something too that is starting to be discussed, this notion of taste or discernment more broadly, that information is ubiquitous. So how do we stand out in that flow? And it's that choosing the right information in the right way, shaped in the right shape, in the right package, if you will, but thoughtfully and tastefully selected. I think that's going to be the conversation we'll be having around what this, what this sector and how we approach our work will really be grounded on and how we stand out. So let's talk about the future. I mean, let's as we get to sort of the end of our chat here, I want us to look forward. We've talked about a lot of the challenges and frictions. We know the current system in Europe and globally are under intense strain. We know that there's also a lot of transformative power to truly create purpose-driven education and leadership that embrace innovation. You talked a little bit about how you do that. Jacques, if we successfully integrate this humanistic approach that's ethically grounded and thoughtful and communicated effectively, what does the next generation university or school of the future look like?
If we achieve this, Marina, the European University or School of the Future will not be simply more digital, more efficient, or more technologically advanced. It will be an institution that dares to answer again the fundamental question: what kind of people and what kind of society do we want to shape? It will be hybrid, but with a clear hierarchy. First the why, then the how. From the perspective of political philosophy, education is not a cold mechanism for producing skills. It is the core of our social contract. It is where we decide how to transmit not only knowledge, but judgment, responsibility, and a sense of common good. The university of the future must cultivate citizens capable of critical thinking and constructive disagreement within a complex world, because our world is more complex than ever. From the perspective of strategic communication, this requires a new kind of honesty. Educational institutions cannot simply claim innovation or the adoption of artificial intelligence. They must explain why they do so and what human benefit they aim to achieve. As we discussed, trust is not built through technical language, but through consistency between values and actions. And it needs time, and especially times of crisis needs time. So here the intersection of philosophy and entrepreneurship, excuse me my English, but I'm trying to do my best, offer a crucial dimension. The educational ecosystem must bridge theory and practice. It must bring the humanities and the technology into a meaningful dialogue, not a Greek word, as you know, not the commodity, not to commodify knowledge, but to demonstrate that ideas have real-world consequences. In this context, artificial intelligence cannot be our compass. It is our tool. The compass must remain human, grounded in virtue, empathy, and democratic responsibility. If this hierarchy is lost, we may end up with highly efficient systems, but far less meaningful societies. In closing, this tradition will be not judged by curricula, but by leadership. We need leaders in education who can withstand complexity and defend a long-term vision against short-term pressures. The real challenge is to build institutions that are technological modern, yet ethically grounded. Institutions that they do merely follow developments, but giving them meaning. Because at the end of the day, the real question is not what graduates are able to do. It's what kind of world they are capable of understanding and shaping. And there, the why, Marina, is not simply the starting point of education, it is its destination.
Powerfully stated. Thank you so much for these insights, and thank you for joining us for this conversation. This is, I think, an ongoing discussion that I hope many more will pick up and participate in.
I would like to
Appreciate
thank
your
you.
time.
It's not only, it is a privilege. It is a privilege. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share these ideas with you.